If you want Colts talk all year long, you're in the right place. This is the official Colts Podcast, giving you an updated look at what's new with the Horseshoes.
He's got it! Touchdown! Jack Doyle! And he's going to be brought down inside the 15, and it's going to go to DeForest Buckner. Huge hole! He's at the 30! He's going to go! 10, 5, touchdown! Jonathan Taylor!
From the Power Home Solar Studio, let's get the podcast started.
The substitute teacher is running class today because Jeffrey Gorman is out of the building. He is somewhere sunning himself and vacationing, going to come back looking like George Hamilton. And I am Larra Overton alongside Matt, Taylor, and Casey Vallier for this week's Colts Official Podcast. Great to be back with you guys as we've booted Jeffrey out of the building, not just this week, but I think next week as well. So it will be all of us. It's the B squad here, JV team running the show, and it is the Colts Official Podcast brought to you by PointsBet Sportsbook, proud sportsbook partner of the Indianapolis Colts, and a faster, easier way to bet. Now live with their college basketball tournament promo. Bet $20 on any tournament game. Get $150 in free bets regardless of the outcome. Sign up with promo code COLTSMM and start betting. There is a lot to unpack this week. So much to dive into. Talking free agency, we're going to preview with the next pick, the Colts draft series, which debuts its new season on Wednesday evening. But first, you guys, get ready, get your arms stretched, because we're going to be doing that TY chant all in 2021. The ghost returns. Lucas Oil Stadium will be haunted once again. Your immediate reaction to getting T.Y. Hilton back as this offense kind of begins a new chapter now led under Carson Wentz.
Well, wait a minute. Hold on, Larry. Before we start, you're telling me we get 2 weeks of Gorman-free podcasting?
That's what I have on my agenda.
What kind of life lottery did we just hit?
Exactly. Listeners out there, you're welcome.
No, this is awesome. And like you said, we have a boatload to get into. T.Y. Hilton, obviously really excited. I think it makes a lot of sense. We talked about this earlier in the week, Larry, you and I. I think it made a lot of sense for the Colts to want to have a veteran receiver in the mix next season, considering the core of this receiving group for the Colts is still relatively young. But the fact that a deal got done with a player that's been here for a decade and loves the franchise and is a franchise favorite makes it an even better situation. This guy is one of the greatest Colts all time, and I think he can continue to be a mentor for the younger guys that you're counting on going forward, like Michael Pittman and Paris Campbell and Desmond Patman to a certain degree. And I think T.Y. Hilton can still play at a really, really high level. And it was fun kind of watching the free agency stock of T.Y. Hilton, because evidently
it's like the best, worst reality dating show you've ever watched, right? It's like you got the hometown dates where guys are going on these visits and they're pulling at your heartstrings like, no, you got to come back. There's the viral campaign on Twitter, bring T.Y. home. I mean, yeah, I felt like I was on an emotional roller coaster for like 3 weeks.
Yeah, it was like Real World meets Road Rules back in the day in the late 90s.
There you go.
Yes. I'm kind of dating myself a little bit, right? Those were the first reality shows.
I always wanted to be on the real. I was a Road Rules over Real World fan.
100%.
Why?
Because I was like a sports guy, so I felt like, I could play these games. I don't want to deal with, going through the house and making breakfast.
Yeah, you want the challenges.
I want to compete. I want the challenges. I'm with you.
No, but I mean, T.Y., he evidently had offers elsewhere, as we found out. But, of course, his affinity for the situation and Frank Reich and this offense kind of won out, and his desire to remain a Colt that was the difference in his decision.
And I kind of want to piggyback what you said earlier, Matt. You talk about having that veteran presence. And I when you look at some of the best teams that Carson Wentz was on, you've got guys in that room, whether it's Jordan Matthews or Deshaun Jackson or, even Alshon Jeffrey, these guys that have kind of proven they're established veterans who he felt comfortable to throw the football to. And you just put another one right in the mix for him in his first year with the Colts. So there's going to be that learning curve, but you have that, kind of that safety valve in T.Y. Hilton to guy who he knows this division very well. So you've got 6 games where, he's going to be all right in those. And everywhere else, he just knows how to get open. He's just a really good safety valve for Carson Wentz in his first year here with Indianapolis.
One of the things that I learned in talking with Frank Reich this week, he had some conversations with T.Y. They were texting back and forth and when the Carson Wentz deal was done. And one of the things that Coach embedded in T.Y.'s brain was, hey, you remember the level you were playing, the numbers you were putting up, how fun it was, what this offense looked like when it was you and Andrew, and you guys were both in peak form, and you guys were both playing at that level. That can be very reminiscent of what things are going to be in this offense with Carson Wentz. So certainly there is a role of Frank Reich kind of, putting that carrot out there to try to lure T.Y. back, kind of giving him those visions of, the success that tandem had. Now, a lot of that had to do with the fact that Andrew and T.Y., came in together and they have this incredible bond and all of those things. But when you do just look at the physical aspects, the traits, the strengths of Carson Wentz, that is certainly something that is very intriguing and how it can pair with T.Y. Hilton and some of the other dynamic receivers that you have with, the complement of your guys like Michael Pittman Jr. and hopefully Paris Campbell, who truly is still kind of, as you made the point, Mate, almost a rookie in and of himself because he hasn't had a complete season yet to get out there on the field. So that's one of the things too, is Frank Reich's recruitment in bringing T.Y. back. With that being said, what do you see T.Y.'s role being within this Colts offense now that you're starting to accrue a bit of youth and some depth in that wide receiver room with the 2 draft picks from last year, Desmond Patman and Michael Pittman Jr. You have Paris Campbell, you have Zach Pascal, you have DeMichael Harris. There are a lot of people in there, and then we also still have a 2021 draft to preview and talk about.
Yeah, I share Frank Reich's optimism that T.Y. Hilton can return to more of that game breaker, down the field threat that he's been in the past. And, the Colts, they got their chunk plays last year with Phillip Rivers. It was a lot of yards after the catch and crossers and overs in the playbook, but the Colts really didn't use T.Y. in that big down the field capacity in the last couple of years with Jacoby Brissett and Phillip Rivers. But I agree with Frank. I think Carson Wentz is more in the mold of Andrew Luck because he has the arm strength and the accuracy to get the ball over the top of the defense. And I think T.Y. Hilton can still run all the routes necessary. He can run the deep out, the go route, line him up in the slot. He can be a red zone threat. He still can create with some yak. We talked about this earlier in the week, Larry. I think it's funny that the 2 things that I go back to with Andrew Luck and T.Y. Hilton, that 2018 season, when those shots were very prevalent in the playbook, T.Y. that year with Andrew had over 1,270 yards. But in the last 2 years, so that's 25 games, 2 different guys as his quarterback, Jacoby and Phillip Rivers. Those 2 years, Hilton has only 1,263 yards. So 7 yards less than he had in 2018 in the last 2 years combined. Another stat that I go to is yards per catch. Last year, T.Y. had a very un-T.Y. Hilton season as far as that goes, 11 yards per catch. But with Andrew as his quarterback in 2018, that number was 16. So a 5-yard difference doesn't sound like a lot, but it is. That is a huge difference in big playability. And, T.Y. for his career, he's never been a big catch per game player, right? He's never been 7, 8, 9 catches per game. But I think with this offense and the way Carson Wentz plays and with his accuracy in the deep ball, T.Y. Hilton can absolutely still go back to being a 4 to 5 catch a game guy for 80, 90 yards potentially with Carson Wentz. Let's see those games that he has against the Houston Texans annually, and let's see those more on a consistent basis through a 16 or 17 game regular season schedule.
As we get ready to go to Casey, 1.2, Mate, that we carry on when you mention, that slow start that you saw from T.Y. Hilton in 2020 and how much of that was slightly attributed to that minimal time that he had with Phillip Rivers, no off-season prior to training camp, no preseason opportunities. And you think about how much that certainly had an impact on that. And one of the things that's being done now is we know that Carson Wentz is sticking around. He's already connected with guys. So you have to imagine that that's a big priority. We know that T.Y. went back to Florida for a period of time, but it seems like that those guys have certainly made a commitment to whether it's getting in the building, if there is any semblance of an opportunity for OTAs or any sort of off-season program, at at least those guys will have the opportunity to connect on their own and go wherever they need to go away from the facility. And we know that the investment has been made from Carson's perspective, and that's also something that TY's already connected on, finding those opportunities to do that will drastically help from, maybe some of the slow start that you saw in terms of production last year.
Yeah, I hope Carson Wentz is keeping track of his frequent flyer miles this offseason because he's going to crisscross the country to work with guys. And I think that's huge. We talked to Ron Jaworski a few weeks ago when the deal became official, and one of the things that he pointed out last year that kind of there was a lot of things that kind of contributed to the Eagles season going south and Carson Wentz not playing up to his potential. But one of the things that he really thought was a factor was the pandemic and not being able to get enough reps or as many reps that he's accustomed to. A lot of new faces on the offensive line. He had some new weapons on offense to throw the ball to. They just didn't get up to speed as quickly or as much as they needed to. And, one of the points that I made this offseason was, last year we were sort of still in the infancy of the pandemic during the offseason workout period in the NFL in the springtime and the summer. And the league was really deterring. They didn't want players to get together. They didn't want people to gather. Remember when the Buccaneers got sort of chastised because there was this overhead view of Tom Brady getting together.
You talk about the lack of the offseason, but it's like, well, that wasn't a problem for Tampa Bay, I suppose, right?
So I think the rules are going to be a little bit more relaxed this year, and that's one of the hot button issues between the union and the league is how this off-season period is going to work. As we sit here and talk right now, we don't know if it's going to be mainly virtual or what, if we're going to have mini camps and things like that.
Hey, but we are going to have the draft. You're going to have people on hand. They're in Cleveland for the draft. So that is a very encouraging step in terms of looking to some progress and finding ways to safely have some of these events more close to what we're used to seeing them. Although they did do a great job of having everything virtual last year, it seems like it'll be a bit of a hybrid this year, right? You'll have a lot of virtual elements, but you will have some on-hand elements.
No doubt.
As well.
Real quick on the draft. Now, you guys may not know this. I think they're going back to Vegas when everything opens back up. I think that they're going to try that for 2022. They had that whole thing where they were going to row the guys in on a boat. Are they still going to try to do that?
Like at the Bellagio fountains?
Yeah, I really hope they do that because I kind of wanted to see, whether it blows up or if it goes really, really well. I think that'll be great.
Wait, is Tom Brady going to float? Tom Brady will be out there tossing the Lombardi in the fountains or something like that to kick the whole things off, right?
What if a guy falls in? Like if you get drafted in the second round, but you fall off the boat in the water, do you automatically get demoted to a 6th round pick just because?
Well, it's back. You know what that's like?
They can take back that selection,
right?
That sounds like a Road Rules challenge, guys. Right? Like you got to cross the moat at the Bellagio or something like that. Can we have a hybrid of the draft meets Road Rules challenge thing?
We have to question his balance. We have to question his swimming ability. So that's all part of the evaluation.
The Wonderlic test. He failed to float across the water.
Oh, that is great.
Well, that was not the only free agency move that has been made over the past few weeks. We also want to catch up on a huge addition to the running back group in bringing back Marlon Mack. You have Xavier Rhodes coming back as well. And then you have some offensive line depth that they have accrued. And then the arrival of Isaac Rochelle, who supplements that defensive line as also. And he's a guy who has a great rapport with Quentin Nelson. So there are a lot of kind of names to go through and to digest as we look at the moves that have been made, although they aren't some of those big major splash plays that some people were like, oh, they got to make some big blockbuster moves, as you have seen other teams maybe do in this offseason. But as we look to the moves that have been made and the signings that have occurred with Marlon Mack, Xavier Rhodes, what are the biggest additions that you see in terms of those guys coming back in the capacity, having them returning to a locker room, to an organization in which they already have such great familiarity?
Well, I think they're huge. I mean, the Xavier Rhodes signing for me was a slam dunk because I think we all would agree that 2020 for Xavier Rhodes, he may not have been named a Pro Bowler, but he was a Pro Bowler in our eyes. And what he did to the rest of that group, it was like, between he and TJ Carey, who's still out there as a free agent, they just brought this different presence to that cornerback room. So I think getting him back into the fold is huge because you just don't worry about him when he's out there. He's a guy that you put out there and you're like, all right, I mean, if you want to go at him, good luck. Because, I mean, if you look at some of his numbers in 2020, they were some of his career highs and they were, tops in the league. So I think bringing him back is huge because it just gives you that different feel. He brings a different, he's a different character kind of guy that he just sets the tone of being, he goes to work, he brings his lunch pail and he just does his job. There's nothing flashy about, him as a he's not out there, Mr. Diva guy. He just goes out and does his job. And I love that he's a guy that the Colts kind of definitely targeted as, hey, we need to bring this guy back. And then, you talk about Marlon Mack. And I mean, we all love Marlon Mack as a person, definitely as a player. We know last year didn't work out like he wanted. But I'm really interested to see how this we talked about it all last offseason when they brought in Jonathan Taylor, this 1A and 1B, not kind of a 1-2 punch, but a 1-1 punch. I'm really excited to see what that looks like.
Especially if you think he can be healthy, which he is trending in that direction towards being available for training camp, which is amazing because he tore his Achilles in September, and we know that's a really difficult injury to rehab from, but it's so low risk, high reward because from a roster mechanic standpoint, you needed to sign a fourth running back anyways heading into the training camp period. So might as well be a guy that very intimately and knows this offensive line very intimately, who's rushed for 1,000 yards behind virtually the same offensive line minus Anthony Costanzo. So absolutely, the biggest thing for me when you bring back Marlon Mack, what you have now is big play ability. Either guy can rip off a big run at any time when they're out in the field. So I really don't see a huge drop-off at all if Jonathan Taylor's not in the game because Marlon Mack, as he's proven in 2019, the last season when he's been fully healthy, he was one of the more versatile and shifty and great, vision-using backs in the NFL.
That's one of the things when you think about all of the different options that they have to utilize within this offense, within that running back group, is just being able, the ability to keep defenses kind of on their heels because you can change things, take a different pace, rotate guys in and out, and always kind of have to keep guys guessing for whether they're scheming against a Taylor, a Mack, a Hines. You, of course, still have Jordan Wilkins in the mix as well. And when you talk about, of course, the run game, we have to talk about, as you said, the departure of Anthony Costanzo, and there have been some signings in terms of the offensive line. Sam Tevi, Julién Davenport are additions that have been made in this free agency period. What do the Colts still need to do, though, with that position? What does that indicate for what they're trying to do now moving forward? Do you think this priority still is in getting someone within the draft and having a bit of an insurance policy with some depth on these veteran guys?
Yeah, I think I think the Tevi signing and the Davenport signing, I think those give you depth. We saw a few weeks ago, don't be surprised if the Colts, we talked about heading into free agency, don't be surprised if the Colts sign some tackles in free agency, considering LaRaven Clark's a free agent, and he's coming off an Achilles injury as well, but that's even later in the season in December. Plus, your tackle depth was really tested last year. You had to rely on 4 different tackles to play and start last year. Anthony Costanzo and Braden Smith, those two guys combined to miss 7 games. So you needed viable options with experience because, as we all know, injuries on the offensive line, they're inevitable, and those spots are going to get tested. So Tevi coming in has that experience, 44 games in 4 years with the Chargers. So he's got the starting chops. Davenport's played in 51 games. He's played both tackle spots with 2 different franchises, but he only played in 53 snaps last year. It just gives you options. It gives you quality depth, but, don't be surprised at all to see the Colts draft a tackle with either their first or second round picks because that's how deep this tackle draft class is. But you never want to force anything, right? You never want to take an offensive lineman or an offensive tackle just to take one if you're going to forego looking at some really impactful players at other positions that you have ranked higher on your board. So that's why it was a good idea to have offensive line options in free agency that have starting experience in the NFL.
Right, and I want to pivot on the Julién Davenport signing. He's a guy that spent some time in Houston before he was involved in that trade for Laramie Tunsil. But in 2018, he started 13 games, I believe, at left tackle for a Houston Texans team that won the division. They were 11-5. So he's got that starting experience on a winning team. So I look at that. I mean, same with Sam Tevi. I look at the Julién Davenport signing as he's a younger guy who was believed to kind of be a left or right tackle of the future in Houston before they, essentially traded up essentially their entire franchise for Laramie Tunsil, because I don't know when their next first-round draft pick is, but it's a long time from now.
I think it's in 2026.
Okay, something crazy. I love that post
Gorman
that the Dolphins
will still be on vacation when they have a first-round pick.
That post that they posted about, the statue they should build for Laramie Tunsil in Miami.
That's amazing.
That was hilarious. I thought that was fantastic. But that's a guy like Julién Davenport who's got that experience. I know last year he spent majority of the year on IR with a couple injuries here and there. So there's a couple things that, he's had some injury concerns, but he was a guy that a couple years ago was thought to be a proven guy for the future in Houston. So I like that there's that there as well.
I think it's Julién. Doesn't he pronounce it Julién?
There is an accent above the E.
Yeah, so maybe it is.
Well, when we're going to talk to him at some point, right? When all of these guys are signed, they typically do a media availability. So first question that Matt Taylor needs to pose is the exact pronunciation. So we can all do it justice.
A fun fact on him, he is the cousin of Michael Kidd Gilchrist. Who won a national championship at Kentucky.
That?
So I'm sure he's got a little hoop, some hoop skills maybe in his back pocket.
He was drafted by Michael Jordan. He spent
some
time with Michael Jordan in the NBA, so,
Interesting. Well, look at this. You're speaking of the fun facts there. Well, one of the things to touch on as well is the departures in free agency. Among those, of course, linebacker Anthony Walker, defensive end Danico Autry, who's going within the division. We're going to have to face him twice a year as he joins the Tennessee Titans. And then quarterback Jacoby Brissett goes to his hometown franchise, playing for the Miami Dolphins, which certainly has to be one of those, scenarios where you've only dreamed about as a kid. What an opportunity for Jacoby and the investment that he's made in South Florida. And we know he does so much community work in his hometown. Now he gets to play there as well. So an incredible opportunity for him. But what does this mean for the Colts at the quarterback position? Is it essentially Jacob Eason's backup job to lose? When you look at the landscape right now and looking ahead to the start of training camp in late July?
I think Jacob Eason should be the front runner. And the argument against that is, if you want to play devil's advocate, hey, by the way, my doorbell just rang, which is phenomenal.
Amazon?
Either that or somebody selling vacuums.
I sent you a pizza, actually. It's about lunchtime.
I don't want to. I'm good on cookies. No, but the argument against Jacob Eason is, hey, you don't know what you have in him because so much of last offseason was compromised, so he's kind of this big question mark. And to that, I would say, exactly, right? You don't know what you have in him, so let's find out. Let's see what he can do with more reps in training camp, be that number 2 guy, getting more involved in practice and some preseason games under his belt. You drafted him in the 4th round, so it's worth an extensive look. And then, you know what? If you get to late in the summer and you need a veteran quarterback to back up Carson Wentz, you find out that you need to go that route, I think that's okay because you can get a veteran quarterback in training camp, and especially after cuts are made on Labor Day weekend in the past, right? We've seen that 2 years ago. Brian Hoyer a few years ago to back up Jacoby Brissett. So those guys are going to be out there if you need to go that route after taking a good, exhaustive look at Jacob Eason.
Completely agree. I've seen some reports of, some veterans the Colts have been, linked to. I saw like Alex Smith. I don't know what I follow on Twitter, but it's like, I would assume if they're going to go a route like that, it would be definitely later. But I think he's definitely got to be the front runner right now. But I agree with you. If you find that you need maybe a little bit more of just that veteran guy who's, okay to be the backup and kind of help, the growth of a guy like Jacob Eason, I think that's also a good route as well. But I think he's definitely got to be the front runner as we head into this, upcoming season.
Well, before we get into a fun little segment and before we bring in our senior content creation specialist, Matt Wilkening, to go into all things with the next pick, you touched on this, Mayte, with the signing, with the re-signing of Marlon Mack, bringing him back into the building. We know the impact that he had just on mentoring Jonathan Taylor last year. I want to kind of circle back since we were talking so much offense there. What do you envision for the potential of this offense when you know you have Carson Wentz, you have so much stability at the offensive line, dependent on what they do there at left tackle, get that figured out. And then you have this rotation of running backs. What does this look like? What do you envision for what appears to be a really dynamic type of offense for what we already know of, the personnel that you have to utilize, and also with Frank Reich, the creativity, the way that he really likes to mix things up?
Yeah, I know you heard a lot about the 1-1 punch last offseason in the running game with Jonathan Taylor and Marlon Mack, and not that I don't think that that's possible. I just don't know how much you're going to hear about that this offseason, and that's not a knock on Marlon Mack at all. Like I said, that's just how good Jonathan Taylor is and how special he can be, because I think he has limitless potential. I think Jonathan Taylor is still going to be the bell cow running back, guy in this offense that gets at least 15 carries per game. I just don't know how many times I want to take carries away from Jonathan Taylor because he's that good. I mean, he made yards last year when there were no yards to be made at times, and he's the total package at running back. Speed, power, vision, home run ability. He can block. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. The good news is, as I said, whenever Mack is out there, you've got big playability at all times. I mean, in 2019, Mack had 28 runs over 10 yards. Last season, Taylor had 35 runs over 10 yards. That was third best in the NFL. 19 of those runs for Taylor last year occurred in the last month of the season when he really hit his stride. So you're going to have a huge threat out there, no matter if it's Taylor or Mack, primarily, again, on first or second down.
With that, we are leading into a lovely little segment that Mayte has cooked up called Would You Rather. We have 3 different scenarios that I will pose, and we will just discuss and debate as we explore the rest of free agency, and we now have less than a month until the NFL draft. Would you rather see the Colts sign a veteran pass rusher in free agency or draft one with a premium pick? By premium pick, we are calling that either rounds 1 or rounds 2. Let's start with Casey.
That's a tough one. I think I would prefer it to be a draft choice just because you have that upside and that youth. But as Matt alluded to a little while ago, you don't want to just draft it just to do it. So I guess when I look at what the veteran pass rushers are available still right now, I think I would actually lean more towards the veteran pass rusher right now, just because I don't know what it's going to look like, whether you're at 21 or if you're in round 2, what that is going to look like. So I would say veteran pass rusher, an example like a guy like Justin Houston, who is still available.
I'm going to say, can I say both? Can I say both?
Sure, it's your game.
Can I take the worst answer possible and say both? Because I want my cake and I want to eat it too. Because whether it's Justin Houston,
but you don't want the Girl Scout cookies they were trying to sell you at your door 5 minutes ago.
I'm good on Thin Mints at the moment here. Every time I go to Kroger, I get sucked in. That's guaranteed $2 out of my pocket.
Just wait till Molly's of age to be a Girl Scout.
Oh, then I have to buy them all.
Right? Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
And then I have to buy all of them and set up the sign-up sheet in the office break room there. No, but I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense to bring in a veteran that can get you in, next season 8 to 9 sacks because, and we've talked about this, Kamoko Toure, Ben Banogu, and Tyquan Lewis, they haven't showed that yet. It's a really big year for those guys in 2021, and if pass rusher is highest on the board in the first or second round, absolutely you take those guys. You can never have enough depth at pass rusher. But the Colts had 40 sacks last year, but as we've said, they played 7 games with 1 or 0 sacks. So consistency is something they're striving for. That's a spot the Colts haven't been able to kind of mine gold in the draft. It's not like offensive line or running back at safety for various reasons. Defensive line draft picks lately haven't stuck, but that doesn't mean you quit trying. So that's going to be fascinating about this draft class because the Colts only have 6 draft picks at the moment. That obviously could change as we get closer to draft weekend or during draft weekend. But with only 6 picks, pass rusher, offensive line, wide receiver, cornerback, all of those things are in play for the Colts, which makes it a really fascinating draft to talk about for the next month or so.
I do think that there is some pressure on the shoulders of Ben Banogu and Kemoko Turay because you are expecting them to show up and be, impact players on this defensive line. And, Kemoko had that devastating ankle injury, and then Ben Banogu had just kind of a weird scenario in 2020 where he was, a healthy scratch for a good portion of this season. I think this is prime time for those guys to rise to the occasion and prove what they're capable of doing. And you would certainly love to see if a deal potentially could be done to get Justin Houston back and just have another veteran presence alongside what you've already established with guys like Grover Stewart and, of course, DeForest Buckner and Tyquan Lewis had a great 2020 season. I would love to see, Justin kind of help bring some of those other guys along in that scenario. All right. Would you rather draft a tackle with a premium pick or move Quentin Nelson to left tackle, at least for the 2021 season? This has been a heavily debated topic since whatever week that was out in Las Vegas when Quentin, moved out there. And then all of a sudden, everybody got the wheels turning for the potential that there is, because there is no doubt Quentin Nelson is a generational player as an offensive lineman. Right now, it's just, do you keep him locked in where he is, or what do you like better? Do you want to draft that tackle with a premium pick, or test Quentin's versatility and move him out there?
So my thoughts are Quentin Nelson, as you mentioned, is a generational guard. That is what he has played his whole college career into his NFL career. And I think if you slide him over, which I think he did a great job, and with the limited that we've seen of him playing there, I have no doubts he can play the position at the top 15 in the NFL because that's just the player that he is. But I think you leave him at guard, because then I think you're making it kind of an issue at two spots. You're moving him to a spot he's unfamiliar with, then you got to fill that spot. So I think you keep him there, and then you draft a tackle, because who you're going to draft is going to be helped by Quentin Nelson being right next to him.
Yeah, I think the draft tells us what the Colts may do heading into the season with Quentin Nelson. I'm drafting an offensive tackle whenever that position is best player available, right? I'm not reaching for an offensive tackle just because Anthony Costanzo retired. So if I go the entire draft without drafting a tackle, or I don't take a tackle until, let's say, day 3, so be it. Because I have no problem moving Quentin Nelson to tackle from guard and sliding somebody else in there. I know a lot of people don't agree with that, but I don't force the issue if I'm a GM in this draft, because I know I have the best offensive lineman in football who, by all accounts, is willing to move if I want him to. Every time this gets brought up to Frank Reich, he doesn't necessarily shoot it down, which tells me to some degree that it's somewhat still on the table. Quite frankly, I don't think it's going to happen, but if the Colts don't draft a tackle, I personally wouldn't have much reservation moving Q to left tackle, because I think in short order, he can prove to be one of the best tackles in the game, even though right now, as we've said, he's one of the best guards in the game. And then next year, you do it all over again. You reevaluate the tackle draft, but I don't force tackle in the draft just because I need one now that Anthony Costanzo is gone. So to me, it makes good sense that the Colts are kind of keeping their options open. If they find a prospect they love at guard, perhaps they move Nelson out to tackle. And if they find a tackle that they think could plug in right away on the right side, then maybe they move Braden Smith to the left side, which is also an option. So if the board doesn't fall the way they hope, and if they're unable to draft a lineman they view as a no-doubt starter in the first few rounds, and they have some security, and that kind of takes us back full circle with what we talked about before with Tevi in here and Davenport in here. It gives you depth behind him. Also, Will Holden is here. So you have options, which is the great thing about what the Colts have done so far in free agency.
I like what Casey mentioned about, if you do draft a left tackle and you have a rookie at that position, he's only going to get better by being next to Quentin Nelson. Similar to that, I think if you do draft a left tackle, that's the Kevin Mawai project, right? You have Chris Strasser overseeing the offensive line, but now you have Kevin Mawai in the building, who is a Pro Football Hall of Famer, who is here to develop young talent on that offensive line and be a complement to Chris Strasser and all the knowledge that he has. So to me, I think that if you have the wisdom, the insight, the development of Kevin Mawai, and then you also have playing alongside Quentin Nelson, that's a great position for a rookie left tackle to be in if he does come in and he's expected to be your week 1 starting guy. All right, we're wrapping this up before we get to our conversation with Matt Wilkening with would you rather see Colts re-sign Trey Burton or draft a versatile tight end in a few weeks? Because Jim Irsay has made no bones about the premium on the tight end position and what that means to this offense. So you feel like if we're reading the tea leaves here, there is something that you want to see done from that perspective in terms of complementing what you already have in guys like Jack Doyle and Mo Alley Cox. So you saying re-sign Trey or draft a versatile tight end or neither? Do you think they're going a completely different direction?
I think you'll see the Colts draft a tight end. You know, Chris Ballard, it's funny. Chris
has
has
been
never
a long time, right, since they've drafted a tight end.
Well, he's never drafted a tight end with the Colts, and the Colts haven't drafted a tight end since 2013.
I was going to say Kobe Fleener, Dwayne Allen days? Is that what we're talking?
That was actually a year before. 2013 was round 7. I think this guy was Mr. Irrelevant, and it was Justice Cunningham out of South Carolina. There's a little...
Never guessed
There's
that
a
one.
trivia nugget
there
for
you. Go. Now you can go down to the local watering hole there with that nugget and maybe win some money.
I was going to go Daryl Daniels.
He was not a draft pick, though.
Okay, all right. Because I was thinking it was right around that time, so all right.
That was in the same neighborhood. But, no, I mean, if a tight end is there on day 2 or day 3, I think that makes a lot of sense for this team. If you go that route, obviously the Colts, and for that matter, every other team is going to be prioritizing athleticism and pass catching, stressing the defense. This guy's going to be young, plus he'll be cheap, so you can mold him. But, you know, if you don't draft a tight end, there's a lot of guys out there that can play that versatile position that you can get after the draft, you know, in undrafted free agency, i.e., you know, Noah Tongiai, who I don't think we should forget about. But I think that's, you know, we talk about the biggest needs on defense being pass rusher. I think the biggest need as of right now is that field stressing tight end, similar to how Eric Ebron played inside the red zone in 2018.
I completely agree with you, Matt. I think a guy like Trey Burton is going to be a guy that is probably going to be available, or a Trey Burton-like tight end is going to be available after the draft and as you get closer into training camp. So I don't think it's necessary that you have to do it right now. You can kind of wait and see how the draft board falls. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't be shocked to see them take a late round tight end. I don't think it's if I look at needs for this offense, in my eyes, I don't think it's like a top 5 need in the draft, because I think that the pieces you have on the roster can get you by, and then you can just, you know, piece in a couple guys here and there, and unless there is a guy. But I don't know, when I'm looking at this draft, I don't hear that it's a super deep tight end group after Kyle Pitts out of Florida. So once it gets past him, and I think he's a top 10 guy. So I don't think you jump up to get a guy like that, but I think it's a pick that, you know, maybe in round 3 or 4, maybe there's a guy there that you feel like can do that. You go after him, but I don't think that right now you have to sign Trey Burton. I think it's a thing you can wait on for sure.
And with that, we wrap up our Would You Rather. We will continue that conversation in the weeks ahead, because now we're driving the ship and Jeffrey Gorman has no say. So we will keep doing these things as we continue this week's Colts Official Podcast and bring in senior content creation specialist Matt Wilkening for all things with the next pick.
Love this guy, senior content creation specialist.
Title.
That is like 4 fancy words for really good at his job and a really good video editor / shooter / creation, all things video specialist for the Colts. And with the next pick, series premiere coming up on Wednesday of this week, which is fantastic. I think this is the 3rd year the Colts have done this, a behind-the-scenes look at the draft process, behind-the-scenes look at the front office. Matt Wilkening joins us now. Matthew, I know you're busy right now, so thanks for the time, my brother. How's it going?
Going well. Feel free to add more adjectives if you like. Keep going. It's okay. And right off the bat, you stuck me in here with Mom. You know who Mom is.
I knew this was coming.
Mom is Larra. Mom, she's like the work wife. So
she takes care of you
in the same row. Yeah. Well, yeah.
And everyone. I am the mom of the department.
So we call her Mom. So I'm here with Mom. I'm gonna get scolded here any second now.
All right. So you've been grinding. I know you've been grinding. You've been locking yourself into that dark room, pouring over the videos and piecing them together to make them all make sense. And there is just, and we'll get to it, there's an incredible flow and an incredible process that you have to make these episodes with the next pick. So just big picture, how do you think with the next pick will be different this year, or what separates this year's series from what you've already created in years past?
Well, I think each episode will be quite unique compared to what was obviously from last year. I think this year, episode 1, I don't want to, give it away or, reveal any secrets quite just yet, but I think that you'll see, the COVID aspect still hitting everybody and how it's affecting the draft room and the outlook with Chris Ballard and the rest of the draft room and how they're looking at ahead, the month of April going into the draft. I think that's the first part. And then there's a couple of, obviously we can't ignore the fact that we've got a new quarterback in the house. And I think that at some point you'll see how all that came to fruition, and and then there'll be some more surprises down the road. So it's really hard to get into it when you don't want to give any trade secrets away right off the bat.
Matt, you've been involved with this series since it was launched. So this is, as Matt said, your third year leading it. Also, we can hire no more Matts into the department. That is a rule. That cannot happen. But you came from a background of covering the Colts for many years. You worked at WTHR before you came to the Colts organization, and then this series was launched 3 years ago. Since you've been involved with it in its infancy to now, what have you learned the most about the process, or what do you appreciate more than you ever could have imagined when you started, shooting, editing, and producing with the Next Pick?
I think what I learned is that the unsung heroes in this building might be in the draft room. I realized that the sacrifices these scouts make annually, traveling, visiting schools, being away from their families. I mean, it's amazing how much heart and soul they put into this organization. And these are people that you don't see on the field every Sunday, in the fall. These guys are in the Southwest or Southeast or Northeast, and they're scouting, and they're the unsung heroes. And they all have wonderful, and they're all different, and they have such great personalities that, I look forward to this time of the year probably more than I do during the season, because I'm with these guys. I love the process of how it's all being developed, how the team's being built, how it's being born, for the season coming up. So it's really remarkable to see how these guys, how they're able to break down players and their opinions on them, and the banter back and forth in the draft room, and their passion for the guys that they scout. So I really think that people don't understand how talented these scouts really are when it comes to picking players to be in this locker room, at the beginning of the season.
When do you start shooting? When do you start gathering materials and scheduling shoots for the show?
Well, this year was a little different just because, we got back in the building in the fall, and I realized, okay, this might be a weird year with different conferences, canceling or postponing their season. So I started compiling, different video assets in case we had to go to that later on. But technically my brain starts, it starts moving probably in January.
I can attest to this.
It probably starts moving in January. What do we want to do? And I'm walking on through the hallways, and I'm bouncing in and out of offices going, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Let's start with this. Let's start with that. Maybe this could be an episode. Maybe that could be an episode. Usually what'll happen is, I'll bug these people enough. I'll bug Larra enough, and I'll bug Matt Dominic, who's our, senior director of content production. I'll bug him enough, and I'll go, hey, listen, let's meet. Let's talk about this so I can get the ball rolling, because it is in a very involved editing process. So there's a lot of video assets to shoot and compile, and then when you're sitting in that editing booth, there's a lot to go through. So you want to have the ability to know what you have to work with as you go along. So you have as much time as you can to produce these episodes. So right now, we're just finishing up, part 1. I just came out of an editing booth where Harrison Pogue, who I'm working closely with right now, he's a color guru. He's great with lighting. He's been fantastic through this whole series. He's putting the finishing touches on some coloring. So
one of the kids, as I lovingly refer to Harrison, one of my kids.
But these guys are, he's so talented. So that he and I can, we're, the key word is collaboration.
It's like a Frank Reich offense.
We collaborate quite a bit. So Harrison Harrison is in there, and he's messing with some color, and we're making some last-second tweaks to it. So once it comes out, we're done. We're proud of the product. But then you don't have time. They said, hey, when you win games on Sunday, you enjoy the moment, but then you got to move on to the next opponent, and the next opponent for us is the next episode.
How long does it take to do an episode? Like you talk about being done with segment 1, transitioning to segment 2. I mean, how much time and energy did you pour into the first show?
Well, I've had a lot of the luxury of this episode, the first episode, to kind of mess with it since mid-January. So I've been tweaking with it and adding. But once you get into one, then you probably have about 2.5 weeks per episode. So, right now it's hair on fire trying to get episode 2 up and running. We just had a meeting about, okay, maybe we're going to do this. Oh, let's change this, and this. And you have to have some thick skins because sometimes you're in the middle of an edit and there's a couple of ideas that run past other people, and oh, I see it this way. So you're constantly making changes, and it's for the better. Again, the key word is collaboration, and it's not just my idea; it's Larra's idea, or it's
And
Harrison's
those are good ideas. There's a lot of good ideas.
That one, we just kind of. You just kind of give her the courtesy smile and
just
wave.
wad it up and throw it in the trash, man.
Exactly.
It's all right.
Yeah, okay.
Hey, this is a safe space. This is a nice nest here. You can be honest.
So no, I mean, Larra, one thing she does, and it's so big, is obviously ask the right questions. And she sits down with Chris or Frank or Ed Dodds or whomever and always asks the right questions. And not only does she do that, but then she goes in and we call them selects. She goes in there and breaks it down verbatim. So when I'm pulling that up in the editing booth, I can see right there, oh, this is what he said, and that's because Larra's diligent at doing it. I mean, and it's one of the few things she does right around here. But I mean, but by all means, you don't see her on camera for these pieces. It's such a huge, impact on how these things are produced.
I am annoyingly curious, if nothing else. If that is the greatest strength I bring into the process, I just ask a whole lot of questions while I try to get the very best to put these pieces in a position that they're narrated by the people who are involved, rather than needing the voiceover or needing someone else to tell them. I think that's one of the beautiful. What'd you say?
Thank goodness.
Yeah, thank goodness. That's one of the things is we have. These incredible personalities to base the series off of when you're allowing Chris or Frank or, like you said, Ed or Morocco or all the different, they're narrating this all because they are all so strong. And we know that coaches talk about all the time a copycat league, right? Well, it's the same thing from a production standpoint. I mean, we look at all the time at what other teams are doing, what content they're putting out there. Matt, how daunting is it going into every year, trying to raise the bar, trying to stay ahead of what all these other teams are doing, and also looking at, we've done this, we've done that, we've told this angle, we've told that angle, we've gone to the Senior Bowl, we've talked about Brian Decker. How much of a task is that each and every year to reinvent?
Well, we were talking yesterday, and there's anxiety there. I mean, I like to think we're 2 years ahead of a lot of other teams who are starting to come out with this type of series. How do we make it different? How do we one-up them? How do we tell the story? And I think, we have our ways of, I don't want to give, again, any trade secrets away, but I think that we have our ways of being able to tell a story. And I think this goes, I don't want to forget to say this, but I think it goes with the trust factor that the front office has with us, with Chris Ballard and Ed Dodds and Frank Reich. I think they allow us the access to be able to tell the stories maybe a little bit better than some other teams would. I mean, these guys show their personalities. There's times where I'll have scouts in the hallway come up to me and, Todd Vasvari, he's our senior player personnel scout, and he'll come up to me and, man, I wish you were here all day because you could see this, and this. You can't be in the draft room, for the entire 12 hours a day. But these guys come up to us with story ideas. And so when they have your trust and you have their trust, it just makes the story even better. So there's some things that I'm hoping to see here in the month of April in the draft room and outside the draft room from these scouts that I think that fans are going to really enjoy seeing their personalities. That hey, they're just more than football gurus. These guys are fun guys to be around. So again, it's a thing where it's a matter of the trust factor is there from Chris and Ed and that whole front office area where they allow us to be able to tell these stories because they show their personalities and give us that look behind the curtain.
That's Matt Wilkening, Senior Content Creation Specialist, which is a fancy way to say he's a video guru. Last one for me, Matt, I guess, just when it's all said and done, or I guess when one episode comes out and then again you're transitioning and working on the next one and the next one, what kind of feedback do you get from friends? And I would suspect people love anything that peels back the curtain to the front office in this draft process. I mean, people eat that stuff up.
I honestly, Matt, I don't really. I mean, I read. I don't. I don't post my own stuff. I don't know what it is about it. That's
what I'm here for.
Yeah.
I'm here to brag on you and tag you in things.
I'm just kind of one of those guys that, listen, from what I read, obviously fans love it. They love, seeing behind the curtain. They love that access. But, I think that it's more, I like to pass the buck along to, I would say like putting an episode or putting a series together is kind of like driving in the Indy 500. You got the driver. I'm behind the wheel of the series. I'm driving it, but there's
you are Elio Castroneves.
No, not far from that. Far from that. Not a 3-time winner, but I think that you have an engineer of people. You have an engineer on the team. Engineers that put this whole car together and put the piece together. You have guys like Harrison, I just mentioned earlier, and we have a guy named Connor Handel, who is one of the most brilliant editors I've ever seen, and Kevin Connors and Mike Stevens, and we have Zach Baker, who is our graphics guy, who's our motion graphics guy, who I haven't seen in a year, who's been able to send me stuff, and his vision's incredible. So and then we have Dave Knickerbocker and Matt Dominic, and even going down to Matt Conti, who's our a director of football communications, and his sidekick Christian Edwards. These guys, everybody is having input in here, and so these guys, it's a team. So they'll have their opinions, and hey, maybe we need to change this, maybe you need to change that, or we should add this or add that. It's the team that really does it, puts this all together. It's just like I said, I'm just driving the car. But from what I'm seeing on social media, it's pretty popular. Everybody's excited. When the trailer came out last week, everybody seemed excited about it. It's
Dude,
nice
people are losing their minds. Like, stop being so modest. Like, people are freaking out because it's a really important draft because, the Colts are close. They have this window. Right. Plus, they only have 6 draft picks as of now. And so that's precious commodity. So any light shown on how the process is being formulated into how they're going to spin those 6 picks is really fascinating.
Well, one of the things I get is, do you know who they're going to pick? And, I'm telling you, I've been in there for hours at times. You don't know. And even the scouts don't know. It's such a process. They sit in there and they watch video after video after video, and you at some point who they like this guy. Okay, your ears perk up a little bit, but it's the nitty gritty. It gets down to the nitty gritty this month. I mean, the month of April is when they're gonna all the pro days are over with. They're gonna be back in the draft room. We hope to be, or we plan on being back in there with them, and that's when I think that they'll start to whittle it down a little bit to where. They know who they like and don't like, and so this month, the month of April, is going to be pretty big in that place and in that room. And I think that we'll be back in the corner, shooting as much video as we can, and because we hope to get that banter. And once the draft is complete, to see if we actually can find some video of this. And I'm talking about the certain player, the banter back and forth, because it's sometimes you're there at the right time, and sometimes you're not. So you never know. And I'm sure that April is going to really come down to where they're going to be able to know where they're leaning. But as of right now, I have no idea.
And then you have to scour your footage to find that part.
Yeah,
which I can't imagine. I can't imagine doing that, and the time and the energy and the resources you have.
You just have to be organized in your video. You just have to know where things are at the right time and be quick to find it. The most difficult, not only most difficult, the most challenging, I should say, is a week of the draft. Is once it starts Thursday night, I'm pretty much locked in that room 5 days. So I told my wife, I said, listen.
And he doesn't mean me. He means his real wife. Not his work wife.
Told the wife, just go. Just go 5 days. Go, go to your mother's and I'll see you. I'll see you in 5 days. Take the dog.
There's a couch in his office, so he's probably just going to sleep there. Like, that's the beauty of the editing suite that he's operating within right now. Yeah. You're just going to be 24/7.
Shoes will be off. I'll have a
He's like Fred Flintstone. He edits barefoot.
Yeah.
You sound like me between the months of August and January, where I tell my wife, I'll talk to you. I'll talk to you in the winter.
Exactly. But you know what? It does say something about having spouses that understand. I will say that. I mean, she's cool. She'd be like, I get it. That we were just talking the other day, hey, the month of April, that's you. I understand that. So,
what? But the month of May is Matt. That's you, buddy. Good for you.
Yep. So we're, but it takes a special person to really understand what you go through. But no, it'll be an exciting 4-part series this year. Again, it's just a matter of making it look a little bit different. And I think this first episode we'll just do just that. We've got some pretty cool behind the scenes stuff. Again, I don't want to give it away, but it was pretty unique stuff that we were able to get.
I know you don't want to give anything away, but again, I'm annoyingly curious. And so just tell me something, because this is going to premiere on Wednesday night.
Oh, okay.
Episode 1 of With the Next Pick. What is something from episode 1 that you are either really proud of or you really enjoyed that you're looking forward to people getting to see?
I call it East Coast, West Coast.
Ooh.
I think
it's like a 90s rap battle.
East Coast, West Coast,
Yeah.
West Coast, East Coast.
Speaking of MTV,
you get a chance to meet 2 more of the scouts and get there and see the struggles that they went through this past season. But they have a great attitude about it, and so you get to meet 2 of the scouts, and some of it, we take you into the to the draft room a little bit, and there might be a little surprise in the draft room. So, I mean, I think there's some things that are pretty intriguing about part 1. Part 2, I'm digging into right now, so I think fans are going to enjoy all 4 parts, though.
So much fun to get to have you back in here and to have this series back as well with the next pick set to debut this 2021 edition on Wednesday evening. Thank you very much, Matt Wilkening, Dad, for stopping by the studio. Senior Content Creation Specialist. Keep in mind, the Colts Official Podcast brought to you by PointsBet's Sportsbook, proud sportsbook partner of the Indianapolis Colts, and a faster, easier way to bet. Now live with their college basketball tournament promo. Bet $20 on any tournament game and get $150 in free bets, regardless of the outcome. Sign up with promo code COLTSMM and start betting today with PointsBet Sportsbook. Again, substitute teacher in the classroom because Jeffrey Gorman is on vacation, sunning himself somewhere on the West Coast. We will be back with another episode next week.